lots of hospitals are now going to look for and have one clinical pharmacologist. So there's going to be a clear identity of a clinical pharmacologist. Now, why I'm talking about clinical pharmacologist, why my topic is of high alert medication. You have seen in my introduction and brief, madam has introduced me. I'm not a clinical pharmacologist. I have no background for clinical pharmacologist. But what I, from my little experience of working in quality and patient safety, I have identified that this group of, there is a whole lot of um, improvements required in medication safety in any hospital. If the hospital is going for NABH or JCI or may not be going for any accreditation, but still we have bound to work for patient safety. At the end of the day, we all, whatever places, wherever positions we are working, we are by legally also, we are supposed to be catering to the needs of the patients. So this topic of high alert medication comes in as a part of a quality and patient safety aspects, as well as part of clinical pharmacology, working for medication safety. A little bit of still, I'm not starting with my slides. I want to just mention 2 3 things here. Was when we started as working for quality and patient safety about say 10 years ago, there um, I attended one workshop of NABH that time on medication safety. And that was a time when I found a group of clinical pharmacology students attending that. That was the first time I came to know that there's something called clinical pharmacologists. I sat with the group, I spoke to them, what exactly do they do? And there exactly I came to know, oh, this is a whole lot of good resource which is there waiting for us to explore. And let me tell you, from there only I picked up one student and I employed him, then appointed him as a clinical pharmacologist in my hospital. The whole idea that time was to work for medication safety, because we were working for safety as such. We were organizing a safety team, a safety committee. So we wanted to work on various aspects: blood safety, medication safety, surgical safety, anesthesia safety, facility safety, so on. So to have, that was a time when we thought we have to work on medication safety. Now, when we started to work on medication safety, various aspects was looked into, right from the way how the doctors write prescription till the time a nurse administered a medication. We came across one very important thing was high alert medications, or ham as you can call it. Go ahead, next slide. Somebody will help me. Ayush, will you help me with this? Yeah. So what are high alert medications? Now, high alert medication, you are a pharma student. I need not tell you the definition, but I have brought a very simplest definition which I can find. HAM are drugs that bear a heightened risk of causing significant patient harm when they are used in error. It doesn't mean that any medication actually will, if given by mistakenly or incorrectly, could cause harm. But especially the high alert medication, if administered or unindicated or erratically given, could lead to devastating effect on the patient, even leading to some death. There are whole lot of instances, a lot of videos. Of course, this is all abroad. India, we are not in that state that we are reporting errors related to harm, related to high alert medication. A whole lot of videos you come across where people have narrated how they were administered a wrong or incorrect, maybe the incorrect dosage, 100 times of dosage, or incorrect route of a high alert medication, leading to somebody's harm, some disability, and even death. These are the drugs which are narrow therapeutic index. So the action would be so quick that by the time a staff would realize that, oh, they probably administered a wrong medication, say, or maybe the medication was right, but the patient whom to give the medicine was wrong. So incorrect patient, medicine preparation, everything might be right, but to administer would have gone to a wrong patient, would have already finished causing a harm. So these are drugs with non-therapeutic index. So the focus on harm should be very critical, because here it doesn't give you chance. It will either cause you harm, or and harm can be anything. It can be minor, major, or even leading to severe harm such as disability or even death. So that is the whole idea, that hospitals must working on if you are working on medication safety, your focus should be on high alert medication. The next slide. So what are the examples of high alert medication? This you all are aware of these. These are adrenergic agents, these are anesthetic agents, anticoagulants, chemotherapeutic drug, hypoglycemic agents, inotropic agents, neuromuscular relaxant or blocking agents, and concentrated electrolytes, the most common, which is used across all hospitals, have this concentrated electrolytes used in and out everywhere. The next slide. But if you rate the top 5 medication, high alert medication, these would be the most commonly used and easily available in every hospital. Every hospital would have these top 5 high alert medication stored with them at any point of time. The next. So the focus is not only the medical legal cases that has happened, in which you would get to read so many on the literature. Because of this, Joint Commission International, JCI as we all call it, has identified certain international patient safety goal, IPSG goal. I don't know, in the screen there is some thing which is coming, Ayush. That's, it's blocking.
Yes, ma'am, I'll just check.
Yeah. So international patient safety goals. Now, these are also called as IPSG goal. The aim of these goals is, patient safety is a vast topic. Where to begin, how to begin, if somebody wants to start to work only on patient safety today. These are the 6 goals. Shall I stop?
Ma'am,
For a
just
while?
a minute, just a minute. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to begin to work exclusively on patient safety, then these are the 6 international patient safety goals which every hospital must work on in order to make safer patient care. So these goals are also called as IPSG goals. They are 6 in number. Actually, they have many more sub goals in this, but to broadly classify them, there are 6 patient safety goals. The first goal of correct patient identification, correct in communication, improve the safety of high alert medication. The goal 3 is improve the safety of high alert medication. So understand this, that medication safety and that also improve the safety of high alert medication is identified one of the international patient safety goals, and every hospital must try and implement procedures, policies, and checks in order to achieve this goal. So there are goal 5, 6, and 7, but not part of our topic. So we have third goal as the goal to improve the safety of high alert medication. The third, next slide. So every hospital, as I said, must put a process in place in order to work on improving the safety of your high alert medication. These are the group of things which we done, which I'm in the next slides, I'm going to um, show you. I'll explain you each of these points. The next slide. What are the tools which we use? it was very important for us, and we, since our quality team and the safety team has initiated this quality improvement program, it was important for us to make a process flow chart, which will actually tell us what is my current process, how are the medications right from the time it's prescribed till it is administered and then monitored. So we made a process flow chart to identify our current process. From that process flow chart, we identified areas and loopholes which are there was a possibility and chance for improvement. So at every step, we decided that okay, let's put this check here and see how we can improve our medication, high alert medication safety. Whenever we put the next tool, which we used, and it's a commonly used tool, is a plan do check cycle. Every step and every check, which I'm going to show you further, was put to a plan do cycle. The plan do cycle is a simple thing. A check was planned. Let's put this check. It was planned. It was implemented, say piloted for a week's time, and we got in checked whether it was really going to help us or is it taking everybody's input and feedback. And then we made those changes and again implemented it. So making it a plan do check cycle. I'm sorry, I'm not able to show you the actual flow chart, how it happened. The next slide. Next slide, Ayush.
Ma'am, just a
Ayush,
minute. Ma'am, just a
yeah.
minute. Just a minute. There's some technical problem.
Mm. So the checks which we did at BCH is first of all, we must know what are the high alert drugs. So it is important to have your own list. Now, own list is, there is a list of high alert medication, a huge list at ISMP, Institution of Safe Medication Practices. This ISMP list is a huge document, easily available, but it's important to review our own formulary. What medications are there in my hospital? Maybe the composition may be same, but the brand name may be different, or one drug may be having 2 3 brands at any point of time. So it's important to look to review our hospital formulary. From there, and with the reference of ISMP, we were able to make a list of drugs, which is called as our own high alert drug list. Now, it's important for the staff to know which are the drugs which are high alert, because it's huge number of medications that the star nurses would not be able to remember. Even the doctors who are prescribing may not, certain drugs, they may not know that this brand is also an high alert drug. So prepare a high alert drug list. This was where which was prepared. It was displayed at every nursing counter. This list is to be reviewed also regularly at an interval, say at least 6 months, because the brands will change and all. So this was important. So the first check is know your high alert drug list. Important one more point in this high alert drug list, whenever we are going whenever anyone makes this, it's important to know whether two high alert drugs are looking same, whether there is any look-alike or sound-alike in this list. Because if there is a look-alike and sound-alike drug which are high alert, there are chances for more arrow, to be administered wrongly or incorrectly, thinking of this to be that. So it was important to um, um, identify which are the look-alike high alert medications or sound alike high alert medications, and separate them from this list and create a separate list of look-alike sound alike drugs. So the next slide. Any medication uh, or medication management process runs in 4 stages: prescription, transcription, indenting, and indenting, dispensing, and then administration. So the first step is prescription. Who can prescribe? Of course, a qualified registered medical practitioner is supposed to be prescribing these drugs. no nurse has any right at any point of time to be prescribing in these drugs. What is important is always these orders should be written down to by someone. It should never be a verbal or a telephonic order. Because example, if it is a chemo drug and if it is being, given as a telephonic or a verbal order, it can get mistaken for some other compound. So we should always never a verbal or a telephonic order of a high alert drug. Somebody sometimes would say give concentrated KCL or give calcium gluconate this much potency. The staff or the nurse may be mistaking it for some other drug or maybe some other dosage. So that is the chance with this verbal and telephonic orders. So we strictly there is no verbal telephonic order for high alert medication. Error prone abbreviations. What are these? These are again the reference for this is ISMP list. There is an ISMP list of do not use abbreviation. There is a wonderful video at ISMP and we show this to all our staff every time where we these abbreviations are very clearly defined. We have adopted these same abbreviations which should never be used while prescribing a drug. Example, a decimal point. If the unit of any drug, say if it is going to be given 1 ml, then never write a point one, never write a zero after one, because that point zero can get mistaken for 10 ml. If the unit is less than 1 ml, then always prefix the unit with 0.1, 0.2. Never write 0.1, because in that point of time, this point over a period of time, and the staff goes on writing in this sheet, another sheet, another sheet, this point will get lost and it will become 1 ml. So we will end up giving hundreds time of a high alert drug. Such certain abbreviation like magnesium sulfate always should be written as magnesium sulfate, because if we don't do that, I forget, it can get confused with electrolyte. One moment, I forgot the comparison of this. So the idea is that we should avoid error prone abbreviations. Always is the recommendation list is only ISMP list. In India, there is no list as such. Every hospital practices and creates their list based on ISMP list of do not use abbreviations. We have to but the most commonest and the most easiest and the most commonly which we have seen in our prescription audit is those abbreviations which are mentioned in ISMP list. So ISMP list is the best reference to make error prone abbreviation. Do not use abbreviation list. So this is very important, because in prescription, if your zero and your point is here and there, you will end up giving hundreds of time of a particular drug. So that is important for high alert medication prescription. That's one. Second point. Now in our system, what we did is we introduced certain alerts. Whenever a medication is prescribed, okay, the next step would be indenting. A nurse would go and indent in the system. Here we have introduced one system which is called indent alert. This in the system, the moment a system nurse will write and search for a medication, say methotrexate. If she selects methotrexate, the alert will ask, you are about to select a high alert medication. The nurse has here a second opportunity to check whether she is, whatever drug she is asked for, what's written in the prescription. So it's a kind of indent alert to the ward while they are indenting. Similarly, there is a dispensing alert which is shown in the pharmacy. So on the pharmacy screen, if whenever a high alert medication drug is being dispensed, the pharmacist is supposed to, it has to be done under supervision. A pharmacist is supposed to check prior to dispensing, that they are dispensing the correct medication as per the intent. So these are the dispensing and indenting alerts which we got through our IT done in our system. Next. Very important thing is storage. So now the medications are come. Some medication would get administered, some would get stored. Now the guidelines say that we should avoid storage of high alert medication as far as possible to the minimum quantity in the wards. If by mistakenly, just imagine there are set of KCL, there are set of DNS, NS, normal saline, they are being stored in one cupboard in a ward, and you have a concentrated KCL or a concentrated normal saline, which you are keeping there along with that. By mistakenly, the staff has the chance to pick up and administer a high alert, thinking it to be a normal IV fluid. So the whole idea is, first of all, do not keep them. If you wish to keep them, you should keep them to the minimal quantity. Then keeping them in your ward or location should be done in such a way that they should be separated with other medications. There should be a lock and key, like for drugs like sedatives and narcotics. They should be labeled as high alert drug, because the staff, though I told you that we will make a list of high alert medication, but to remember this big list, no staff can remember. And at the time when they are supposed to be giving a medication, say in a time of emergency, suppose there's a code blue situation and they have to go on giving adrenaline, atropine, inotropics, that is a situation where the staff may not even see what is high alert and what. That is why it is important that we should have some color coded labels on these medications, that so that these medications are easily identified and alert the staff who is administering it. Also, there's something called of tall man lettering for labeling this. Now, this is important, tall man labeling in pharmacy, from where the medicine would be dispensed. Huge number of drugs are kept there in the racks. There, if we use a tall man writing, we'll be able to identify. The tall man writing is a very simple thing. One medication with two dopamine dobitrix. Now, both of them start with DOP. So that DOP is getting Tallman so that it's easily identified. We should also avoid, I finished telling you that we should avoid storing them except in which is the area where we can safely store them. It's in the ICUs, because in the intensive care units, only where such medications will be used. Wards, basically, we should avoid, because wards, if you have to give, then minimum quantity. As far as possible, everybody has an in-house pharmacy, so these should be able to be, the staff should be able to get them immediately as and when required. Now, there is one more thing called as crash cart. Now, in the crash cart, every hospital, every ward, as per NABH, should have a crash cart. So, in crash cart, these high alert medications can be stored. Now, again, crash cart is under lock and key. So, the policy is simple: label them, keep them in less quantity, keep them under lock and key if you're keeping in a ward or ICU. The next slide. Label at source. Yes, where this labeling should happen. Ideally, the labeling should happen from the pharmacy itself. It should not happen that the labeling should be done at nursing counter, because if we give the nurses this role of sticking labels, the moment they receive huge amount of dispensaries come to them, they would sit and put labels. No, that's not right, because they may put labels for some drug or some, or some places the labels where government is not required also. So labeling at source from the pharmacy for easy identification for the ward staff, so without a high alert medication label, no medication should reach any ward. Now it can be labeling should be for the all kinds of drug, even a small injection vial, tablets, or your infusions, your insulin pens. All these drugs are or tablets are to be labeled. Now, medications are come, they are stored. Now they are to be dispensed, or sorry, administered. Now, what is the guideline? For high alert medication administration. Two different registered nurses should administer a high alert drug, and where this should be done, this different registered nurses, prior to administering this drug at patient bedside, should confirm the patient identification, match with the drug order or the prescription, labeled drug infusions which are prepared, and then administer. So this whole activity should happen at patient bedside. It should not happen that the drugs are prepared at some treatment room, and from there the medications are being carried in a particular room, and there are chances of error, that somebody may be entering a wrong patient room, somebody may not be identifying the patient by their name, talking to them, confirming their name prior to giving medication. So the policy is that in case of high alert medication, two different registered nurses should be present at patient bedside prior to administering this medication. Now, this is again to avoid any administration related, medication administrator related errors at patient bedside. So this is a high alert drug sheet, two-person signing sheet. So if I have to put this together, we created one more thing which is called as high alert medication pathway. Now, these are the checks, and physically what are the labels, what are the storage things, how are we going to list them? We all prepared this. Now, important was actual process, who's going to see. Here comes the role of a clinical pharmacologist. So we identified, we gave this process to our clinical pharmacologist, and this is one of their routine practices to see every day a high alert medication prescription and the process flow, how it happens. So quickly I'll tell you how a clinical pharmacologist can also be part of this medication safety improvement program. Once a high alert medication is prescribed, the high alert medication will be indented by the nurse. Once a nurse indents, I told you there is indent and alert and dispense alert from the pharmacy on the screen. But it is also important to have this. So we introduced this called as email and SMS alert to clinical pharmacologists. So a clinical pharmacologist would get an email. So every day they get a list, or they get an email that, okay, these are the list of high alert medications dispensed today for this patient. So vis-a-vis the patient name, I'm showing you in the next slide, the drug which is administered. So from here, the clinical pharmacologist must review this prescription. Since they are on the ward and they know the patient history, and they can correlate with the patient's history and all the notes, they review the prescription. Here it is important, and with the help of up-to-date software which we have at all our nursing counters, the clinical pharmacologist will search for the drug-drug interaction with the help of this software of up-to-date, and also will find out if there are any irrationalities in this prescription. If so, a clinical pharmacologist is a resource person in this case. If there is a drug-drug interaction, they are supposed to be talking to the consultant or the prescriber. Okay, sir, look, you have prescribed this, but I see this important drug-drug interactions in this prescription. I would like to advise monitoring, like certain drug would cause bradycardia. Example, paclitaxin would cause bradycardia. So sometimes they would be there, the resource person, to tell them, look, if sir, you're this patient, since you are already prescribed this, may fall into bradycardia, we need to monitor them. Patient monitoring can be done by the nurses, as well as the clinical pharmacologist who is around to supervise this activity. Now, what happens with all this is we are going to prescribe high alert medication. They are going to be dispensed. They are going to be administered. It will be an informed approach, evidence-based approach for prescribing and using these drugs. So a clinical pharmacologist person is the person who is an important resource here, who is going to check your high alert medications right from the time they are prescribed till administered, and also monitoring after the administration of that drug happens. So this is a kind of pathway which we created for the clinical pharmacologist pertaining to high alert medication. Next slide. So this is just an example of how an SMS alert will go to a consultant and an email alert will go to the consultant as well as to the clinical pharmacologist. Look, these are the drugs which have been administered today. If from this list, a clinical pharmacologist finds that, oh, this is some highly potential drug which they have given, or has or they feel, oh, they doubt any of this prescription, they would immediately contact the consultant and say, okay sir, are you sure you want to prescribe this? Next slide. So this is how it happens. Next slide. Yes, with the help of UpToDate, I told you that the DDI clinical discussion happens. So, with the list of drugs and the high alert given to that patient, what are the stuff which can happen to a patient? What are the possible drug-drug interactions which can happen to the patient? Are all with the help of evidence-based guidelines which are here. They are shared with the consultant by the clinical pharmacologist. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, there'll be the categories of drug interactions, and there are there in UpToDate. I would just show you XD and all your clean. I'm not a clinical pharmacologist. I won't be able to describe much on this, but I know for the sure that this is the software which we are using it for, and we have bought this software in order that we for rational prescription of higher alert medication. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, these are few of the examples. Domperidone, amidaron increases chances of prolonging of QT interval. So many examples you'll get. So many you'll get on net, but these are examples which which I have seen in our setup. Next slide. Yes, this is one of the example I thought is how to once we put the process in place, say from right of putting so many IT related solutions, alerts, use of clinical pharmacologists, making labels, keeping them separate. It's important to know how much our process is working. And this we should do on a continuous basis. So the prescription audit is one audit, which is a daily audit and part of job responsibility of every clinical pharmacologist, which I've divided them ward wise, so that they are given designated wards and they are supposed to be checking the prescription of all patients on their particular ward. This is a format of how a prescription audit sheet would look. Here, in to be very simply to tell you is that here we are very writing about the rights of medication, right drug, right dose, right dosage, right route, so on. So all those rights are captured here. Also, it is important that any duplication is there of medication. Also, from here we are able to capture whether the medications are written in capital letters, and now all prescriptions should be in capital. This is a guideline. So all the parameters we are able to capture from this drug sheet. So it's called as prescription audit sheet. This is part of daily job of a clinical pharmacologist. Now this is a medication administration audit sheet. Now these are rights of medication, exactly what a nurse is doing prior when she is administering any drug. So for this work, for this activity, we have a safety nurse also in my team. So we have put this medication administration bedside audit to be done by a nurse, because here a nurse would be the right resource to, talk to other nurses, quietly observe how are they going preparing, where are they preparing, are they doing double check at patient bedside, are they signing the documentation that, that as is the double check signed at the time of giving or maybe at the end of the day. So many points, like how is there a labeling of high alert medication the moment it is being prepared, is the label of infusions is being done. So all these parts are checked with the help of a checklist. So we made a very simple checklist, and my safety nurse conducts this audit on random sampling basis. She would just walk in the wards, and whichever places she could see medication being administered, she would put her audit in such timings where the medication administration is usually happens, and that time she would see. One important part of the checklist here is correct patient identification. So a nurse who is going in a patient room with a medication prepared, is she really checking the patient's ID and talking to the patient? Band can be wrong, but talking to the patient will not be wrong. So we have to identify correct patient prior to administration of medication. So this is an important part of this medication audit cheese sheet which we prepared. So like this, we have prepared many sheets. There's a sheet for high alert medication also. Yeah, this is a medication online incident reporting form. We have an incident reporting format, which is an online tool, and it's a different topic in itself to talk about incident reporting and how our incident reporting mechanism one should be having. We have designed our in-house online tool for easy reporting. Now, in this online tool, this is anonymous reporting. Anybody can report any incident which they feel will require attention of the safety committee, and which they feel that some work should be done for improvement, can report an incident. This tool is there on every nursing counter, on every PC, so any nurse can log in and create an incident report without identifying themselves. In this incident reporting format, we have created various forms. One of the form here is medication error reporting form. So here it's a very simple form. The person has to identify which department. If they want to identify patient diagnosis, patient details, they can. Others, we don't need it. But what we want to know is whether it was a prescription, administration, or whichever error, or if they are not able to identify this would fall in which category, they would just mention it as other and write and give us a little description of this error. Now, this is one method of self-reporting of medication error. Now, let me tell you, all guidelines clearly say that medication error reporting by self, by the staff, is very, very poor across the world. Self-reporting will be very, very poor. Only if there is a sentinel event or an event where the harm has happened and the staff doesn't know how to deal with it, they would definitely report. Otherwise, a near miss whether an incident was about to happen but did not reach the patient, would rarely get reported. But still, we should have a mechanism for helping the staff to report the errors, and this is the reason we created this. Now, this kind of self-reporting would be rare and very poor anywhere in every hospital. It would be like that. That is the reason that we have an on the job various clinical pharmacologists which are put up at every ward, who would proactively go and identify if there are any medication related errors by doing prescription audits, by doing administration. So this is the reason that we need to have, apart from this medication incident reporting, we should have a method where we have to identify proactively what can be the errors. This is the reason that our CPs are moving across the hospital and collecting and picking up errors and correcting them. That is also very important. In this incident report, the format, if somebody reports, then there'll be a root cause, then there will be a discussion for the corrective preventive action. It's going to take time. But when a prescription audit happens at the time on the ward, the correction happen there and there. So there are chances of bringing more elements of safety when a prescription or a medication administration bedside audit happens. So that is the reason that all other audits are incorporated, and though by guideline we must have a medication error reporting format also, and this is the reason we created a simple format like this. These are very simple format. There's no standard that what format should be for these audits and all. These are audits and formats which we have created on our own, and we have it has helped us. So, and we are able to get good amount of data from here. So that is how, for anyone who wants to do this audit, should design a simple sheet for themselves. Of course, take inputs from CP, take inputs from the nurses. They will tell you many things, and then make a simple sheet and go ahead. And I think lots of errors and areas where improvement can happen can get easily picked up. And I think that's how a quality or a safety team should work for. The next slide. Next slide, Ayush. Yeah, this now suppose a huge lot of medication errors, prescription error, documentation error, administration error would be related to document would happen, but not a wrong drug administered. This kind of the errors would be again be very, very rare. Whichever errors one identifies in various audits, it's important to categorize which which error needs to be worked for. There's certain errors that may not have any harm. There is documentary error. We can correct them there. We need not do a full corrective preventive action, root cause analysis. A root cause analysis for events which have caused serious harm. Otherwise, all these errors can be corrected at their level. But as per NABH or say JCI, we need to classify every error into some category. The NCCMERP, again, this is the reference here is National Coordinating Council for Medication Error Reporting. This is a standard and this is easily available. And we should try and put our errors in these categories. So error A and B, it's also called as harm score. So harm score A and B may have not harmed the patient, or it does actually not reach the patient. It was about to happen but did not reach. From C and D and E and F onwards, these are errors which reach the patient. And as the category goes on increasing, they have caused serious harms. So we should never have errors above C, above D, E, F, because there is a serious harm happened. Up to C and D, there is error which has occurred, but which has required monitoring of that patient, say administering an antidote. All that will happen. Error happened. So all of us should actually be having A and B kind of error. C onwards is error occurring and then needing to some kind of intervention. So this will only happen if we are doing a proactive, ongoing prescription audit, and it should be a daily activity, because then only we would be able to bring that culture of safe medication practices will happen. Because here, initial days we will pick up errors, but slowly when our system is in place where we are continuously picking up errors, correcting them there and there, slowly it gets into the culture of the organization, and the errors would go on diminishing. And one could very confidently say, okay, there are safe medication practices in our hospital. So this is the whole aim of any accreditation also. And this is, let me tell you, in every accreditation, be it NABH or GCI or Canadian or whichever accreditation, prescription audit, administration audit are compulsory to be done. And this year, now the NABH is the 5th edition, the latest edition. They have identified clearly one standard, that there should be a clinical pharmacologist conducting a prescription audit. prescription audit ideally should be done by them. If at all there is nobody as clinical pharmacologist to do this audit, who can do it? Can we make a nurse do a prescription audit? Can we make a doctor do a prescription audit? The guidelines say it should be a multidisciplinary team doing a prescription audit. So a doctor also should be there, a nurse also should be there. Together they should, a pharmacist should be there. Together they should do a prescription audit. But we have a whole lot of clinical pharmacologists now. There and they are fresh graduates which are coming. And I think we must take this opportunity to bring them in our system and adopt these new resources which are available in our country. Why not take them and put them in our system? And they would work very beautifully in enhancing our safety. So this is the index for categorizing your medication errors. Next slide. Yes, it's always important that there should be something. We must celebrate our success. We must celebrate the good practices, the efforts which the staff put in order to achieve medication safety or say patient safety. We in our hospital, I'm just showing you few pictures that we conduct this patient safety campaign. We did it's an yearly activity. Of course, 2020 we didn't do anything, so it's a yearly activity where we have a patient safety week. One day is designated only for medication safety. These are our leaders, our CEO, director, madam, who are seen at the center. Various activities, various games, competitions are organized, and the whole idea here is to motivate the staff for reporting of error, motivate the staff to follow our SOPs, motivating the staff um, for correct patient identification, motivating the staff to reach the patient safety goals. Because without doing IPSG, we will not be able to achieve any safety. So the next slide. These are a few pictures. Now, important is again refreshing the training, because medication safety should be part of training right from the time a staff joins, like induction. And we have induction for the nurses, we have induction for the resident doctors also who come. It's done by the clinical pharmacologist, and describing them what is correct prescription practices, what do we expect them when they are working in our system, that these are things they must follow. Explaining them about high, higher medication is, giving them examples of lookalike, sound-alike, also making them aware of the do not use abbreviation list. So all these are part of our training module, which is at induction of all categories of staff, whosoever is involved in patient bedside. And secondly, it's a yearly activity also as a refresher program. So it's done in auditorium, it's done at the ward level, so that easily, we are spreading the word. Next slide. Yes, this was one of our games which we played, House of Horror. Next slide. Next slide. Slogan competitions, awarding the winners. So these are some good time which we had, and we must appreciate our staff for putting in the efforts and following whatever small guidelines, small checks which we put in our system. It's always medication safety is a continuous journey. Patient safety is a continuous activity. It cannot be there that, oh, I did one QIP and it is over. No, our QIP is an ongoing activity. It's a continuous activity. Audits are continuously going to happen also for the fact that if you are accredited, you must have documented evidence that you are doing prescription audits. So for that reason also, we must have a continuous program of medication safety in your hospital. I thank my CP, I thank my nurses who have worked so effortlessly with this safety team, and then try to bring these few small checks in the hospital, and so that we can be really sure that our medication safety practices, we have been able to incorporate some medication safety practices. I know there will be many more things which could be done. At this moment, we are doing only this much. Just to share with you, if you look up the literature, I saw there is something called as bedside prior to administration of medication. There is barcoded, there's barcode, point of care identification, matching the drug with the recipient. So there are many more IT related tools which are coming up. At our hospital, we are able to only implement these few checks with the current IT system which we have. And I think the whole idea was to make it simple, because if it was complicated, my staff would not do it. And it was, that is why we are happy, and we were okay, these small tools have helped us, and it's an ongoing activity now, so everybody's trained. This is the smallest topic which I thought. Manju has asked me, ma'am, what you can contribute. So I said this is small QIP which I did in my hospital, and few things which I can share with you. Happily, I would share with you. Anybody would have any questions, I would love to answer. Uh, thank you. Thank you, friends. Thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity of sharing my experience.
Thank you, Reshma ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and delivering such a wonderful session.
Thank you, dear.
Participants can unmute themselves to ask any questions if they want.
Participants can ask any question if they have. Thank you, ma'am, Reshma ma'am, for giving us insights on HAM, IPSCG goal, then the quality improvement tools, PDCA, and exemplifying us the possible errors with the abbreviations and what we think will be a documentary errors. These errors can really turn into horrors. And then what are the needs for the alerts, storage of HAM, labeling administration, and the HAM pathways, updates, up-to-date software, and enlightening us with the different type of audit sheets, medication error, administration, prescription audit sheets, and the NCC MERP index. So even I am fortunate to chair the session, this valuable session, and it was really very simple for us to understand what possible errors can occur during with respect to that of HAM. I think there is one question from Dr. Samir Sawant. You can unmute yourself. Samir, sir. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Thank you, madam, for the excellent session on HAM, higher alert medication, and it was really useful. And let me appreciate that it was very informative, and the most important thing was it is very simple to understand. And I hope it will become simple to later on for the students and for the faculty related to the same to adopt it later on. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Manju.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words and enlightening us with so much valuable information. Now we'll request everyone to put on their videos for a screenshot. Thank you so much, everyone. Now we'll take a small break and get back to you at 3:15.